And the Oscar goes to...
And the Oscar goes to...
And the Oscar goes to...
I don't care!
What's next?
What's next?
What's next?
Don't you want to hear what's next?
What are you going to do next?
What's next for you?
What's next?
What's next?
Okay, so what's next?
I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of After the Gold. And this week we're going to be looking at the 1993 film Philadelphia, a movie that was perfect for its time, but I'm going to argue is even better today. But if you're new to the series, welcome. What I do every single week is talk about Best Picture follow-up movies. What was the movie that a director made right after winning Best Picture, and what does that tell about them? Why did they decide to make it? Did they see an increase in budget? Where does it fit within their career? That's the kind of first half of the video, the production history, the details. Did it end up winning, more Oscars? Was it nominated for anything? What was the kind of cultural reputation at the time? And then how has that kind of aged today? And then the second half of the video, I give my thoughts on the film, why I think it's worthwhile, why I think it's interesting. And I, spoilers, really enjoyed this movie, so I really wanted to do a deep dive on that in the second half of the video as well. But this is also a movie with a great production history, so really excited to kind of jump into this one too. So let me know in the comments down below. I always love to hear that kind of stuff. If you've seen this movie, if you've seen Silence of the Lambs, what's your thoughts on kind of Jonathan Demme generally? And if you like this series, feel free to subscribe to the channel. We release episodes every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern time and have a great back catalog of this series in particular. Kind of nearing the second half, near the end of things. Old Oscar countdowns coming up. You can see it kind of down in the future, but we still got, a good few more episodes left of this series, so still kind of stick around with us while we got this going. But without further ado, let's jump into things, starting off with the first part of the video, the production history. Now, before we go forwards, we have to go backwards. Let's talk about The Silence of the Lambs, the movie that was made right before this, 1991. One of only 3 movies to win the Big 5 Oscars, those being Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Screenplay. Actually, it was just a few weeks ago where we talked about Hair, which was Milos Forman's follow-up to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, another movie that won the Big 5 at the Oscars. And what's interesting about the Big 5, I think, is that it is a complete domination of the Oscars. If you think about it, it's the top 5 categories. And it's only happened 3 times in Oscars history. So Demme coming after The Silence of the Lambs was in a great spot. And sometimes I forget Silence of the Lambs even won Best Picture, because it's one of these movies you think of like Shawshank Redemption or The Fugitive that you'll catch on TV that's just on all the time. It's kind of like a thriller programmer. That's not a prestige type of a movie, right? But the thing is, it was so good, it was so well beloved, released even though in February of that year, it just kind of built in esteem so much so that it kind of dominated the next year's Oscars. A really kind of unique scenario, but also gave Demme a lot of power in terms of what his next movie was going to be, because Demme wasn't a huge filmmaker when he made Silence of the Lambs. He had made some good movies, but he wasn't like a huge big name box office Steven Spielberg type or anything. But now ultimately he kind of was. He makes Silence of the Lambs, which is a complete, total, huge hit. Every sense of the word. Commercially did very well at the box office, wins all of the Oscars, and now he kind of has that kind of a power of a unique combination of he knows what the audience likes, he knows what the critics likes, so he's not really in a position to have people say no to him. And what he does is use that creative capital to make a movie about AIDS and the kind of crisis that was going on at that time. Had been going on in the 80s, but I think in the early 90s was really starting to bubble up and enter maybe more of the mainstream, with Magic Johnson getting it in 91, and then this movie here in 93. But he's making the movie and decides to do it after Silence of the Lambs in 91. He had been thinking about making a movie about this for a little bit, so he already had that kind of in his back pocket. He was a New York filmmaker, so he knew a lot of people dying of this at the time, so there was kind of an opportunity to make a movie on a big scale, and he was kind of the man to do it at the time. There was some conversation as well that maybe he decided to do this movie in response to some of the negative response that he got to the Buffalo Bill character in Silence of the Lambs from the queer community. So there's maybe some reasoning behind that too, but I think it was also just he knew people who were dying from AIDS. This was an important social issue drama at the time. He'd been thinking about this movie, and he was one of the few filmmakers at the time that really could have even gotten this movie made. So he cast a couple of exciting up-and-coming actors, gets it done, and surprisingly it becomes a huge hit. Makes over $200 million at the box office, becomes one of the top 10 highest grossing movies of that year, something that I think would be very crazy to think about today, this kind of a movie to be such a huge hit. But it had big movie stars in Hanks and Denzel, even though they weren't at that kind of a level just yet, but they were kind of still well known. And yet what's interesting is that the movie doesn't get nominated for Best Picture or Best Director. It does get a few nominations and actually wins for Tom Hanks for Best Actor, and it is an important movie I think because of that. But I think growing up, the way that this movie was positioned to me was the ultimate Oscar bait movie. It was a movie that was a social issues drama, gave kind of actors an opportunity to have these big long speeches and play maybe marginalized members of society, designed to win Oscars. And yet what's interesting when you look at the history of it, and I'd seen this movie many times, but when you look at the history you go, well, it actually didn't win Best Picture. It wasn't even nominated. It wasn't even nominated for Best Director. So this was the kind of Oscar baity movie. It only ended up winning one kind of major Oscar in the case of Best Actor for Tom Hanks. And then when you see the content of the movie, I think that's wildly untrue. I wouldn't say it's kind of an Oscar baity type of a movie, even though that's kind of its modern day reputation. And speaking of modern day reputation, I think at least within the Oscar community, that's kind of in part due to it. That being said, I do think it's been growing in time, because of Demme's early death. There was a lot of kind of retrospectives on his career, and interesting, I wasn't a huge Demme fan until I really started to explore his movies, and I started to explore his movies because after his death, you hear some of my favorite filmmakers of Paul Thomas Anderson or Brady Corbett or Barry Jenkins, they're dedicating their movies to Jonathan Demme. So you go, okay, well, if all my favorite filmmakers like this one guy, let me check out some of his movies, and then became a huge fan of Demme as well. So you have the aspect of Demme growing in appreciation over the years, and then also I think just the fact that this movie will forever be tied to Tom Hanks winning his first Oscar, and Tom Hanks and Denzel Washington, today still two of the biggest movie stars working, and both of them are in this movie. So there is kind of a good legacy, I think, that this movie won't be forgotten, it will be remembered, and particularly, of this kind of period of time of the age drama, and being a really representative movie of this kind of an issue made, during that kind of a time when it was at its peak. So transitioning into my thoughts on the film, I mentioned up top that I really enjoy this movie. I really like it. Demme is a personal favorite of mine, and I think he's the ultimate kind of humanist filmmaker, up there with someone like a William Wyler. And I don't know if this movie is, woke, or if it has the right politics, or can't comment it on that from that point of view. I can only kind of comment it on how it made me feel, and the movie ultimately just really moved me. And I think a lot of that has to do with Demme and how he kind of approaches the story and approaches the characters, and importantly kind of what he decides to show and not show, and how he decides to structure things. So I think, I mentioned earlier that I don't think this is an Oscar baity movie, because I don't think this is a movie just about Tom Hanks being sick throughout the entire movie and we get to wallow in his pain. It's actually a very entertaining movie. It reminds me a lot of Terms of Endearment, where that was a movie that was billed as sort of like a cancer drama. But the cancer stuff really is only in the last 30 minutes of the movie. For the most part, it's just like a great relationship between a mother and a daughter and their kind of lives over the years. And similarly here with Philadelphia, it's actually just a really great courtroom drama. Very entertaining, good case, charismatic lawyers going back and forth, smart dialogue. It is a movie that I think is a lot easier to watch than just, this really tough AIDS drama where everyone's going to be really sad and it's going to make me feel bad. It does in a way, but I also think it's kind of a life-affirming movie. And some of the tricks I mentioned that Demme does is his classic direct point of view, look at the camera style filmmaking, where he'll have the actors look directly at the camera. And it's a really versatile tool, because in a movie like Silence of the Lambs, you can use it with Hannibal Lecter, and it's menacing and it's dark. But also in a movie like Philadelphia, It looks like someone's looking, you're looking directly into their soul, and you can look at them as a person, and that kind of a deep, empathetic, emotional connection that he just asks of you because he's pointing the camera at their face and they're looking directly at you, and you have to kind of confront and reckon with the fact that, this almost feels like a real person, that this is actors, yes, but you're still kind of looking into a person's soul and their identity. And I think that's what's so great about the movie as well, is that it uses this structure to point more of a humanist view of this issue. I don't think it necessarily gets into the politics of things, that I don't think it is a kind of perfect movie where everyone is doing the right thing, or that it is a kind of moral movie. I don't think it's frankly being interested in that. I think I was listening to the Rewatchables podcast, and they were doing some research in which they found that Demme at the time mentioned that he wanted to make a movie for his time, a 1993 movie that had that point of view. And I think you can see that very much so. No one is kind of a perfect character, which I appreciate. For example, Denzel Washington, I don't think he's, saved by the end of the movie and has this correct point of view. I don't even necessarily think the movie is interested in the kind of the moral debate or the political debate of resources or anything like that. What it is interested in is the kind of basis and the kind of core of the issue, which is that this is a person with a disease that is dying and needs some help, or at the very least needs some kind of basic dignity and respect, and does that through the kind of point of view of the law. That, well, according to the law, this is kind of a wrongful firing, and that's what we're going to be focusing on. And there's so much kind of many avenues to tell these types of stories. I think some people can be frustrated that this is kind of seen as the age drama, along with other things like, Angels in America and what have you. But I think for a lot of people, they want one movie to be representative of everything. So you have to have all these kind of elements to it. And they get frustrated that it's not that. But I actually like that it's not that. You see the point of view of Denzel Washington's character, where he has fear with Andy and some of the disease and the kind of prejudice that he brings. But it doesn't necessarily judge Denzel Washington's character as evil villain, just that was kind of the point of view and in the time of the country. And then also you see someone like a Tom Hanks, he doesn't have a family that hates him or is criticizing him for his lifestyle. That's not just like another element of drama that didn't need to be in the movie, that I think some people maybe want to be. I know there's also some criticism of wanting to be more kind of intimate in the kind of relationship between Antonio Banderas and Tom Hanks's characters. But when I think about those things, I go, yeah, but that would almost distract from the core identity of the movie and the focus of the movie, which I do think is using the framework of the law to boil things down to this is a person with a disease and frame it to that point of view, rather than judging the potential recklessness of the lifestyle that the Mary Steenburgen character is trying to kind of put upon Hanks, and whether or not that kind of leans into the lawyer stuff or any of the kind of personal judgment or moral judgments putting it onto someone right or wrong. It's more so to the fact of taking it as this is a person with this a disease that they're afflicted with. It exists, they have it. What are we going to do from there on out? How are we going to approach this? Can we treat them with kind of just basic dignity and respect? And is that kind of the most simple thing that we can do? And I think by boiling it down to that, I found it to be a really emotional and narrow and focused kind of a point of view, and therefore even more persuasive to the overall kind of an issue, because it doesn't get bogged down on specificities. It comes down to more basic ideas, and that's something I've always enjoyed. Sometimes I don't like always very political movies because they can feel dated, but can you make a movie about greed or envy or love, historical, just kind of great topics and great ideas. In the same way, you can see this movie, and it's a movie with a point of view of how people thought in 1993, and yet why I still think it works today is not because some of those conversations are accurate or people think in the same way, but because it's just arguing for the basicsness of human decency, of respect, of treating someone as an equal. And by having this kind of very you could argue idealistic, but kind of simplistic point of view and core point of view, I think that's able to kind of transcend all the kind of noise and the politics and the cultural context at the time, just being a really moving, emotional, and empathetic movie that does stand the test of time. So it kind of works on both ways, where you can look back and see this is a very 1993 movie and how people thought at the time, but I still think it kind of works today because it kind of takes a more core perspective and core point of view in its storytelling point and how it kind of tells things through the story. So I find the movie very entertaining, with some great acting, but ultimately its magic, its strength is being earnest and empathetic and humanist, and being able to put you in the shoes of someone else for 2 hours and make you feel, and that's some of the stuff I love about movies so much, so when they can kind of transport you into a world, not a fantasy, just, you know, someone else's life, not an escapism, sci-fi, Star Wars, just this is someone else, this is their story. Let me tell you about that, and the power of movies that can and kind of inflict upon you, and, you know, maybe make social change later down the road, but ultimately, at least for those 2 hours, make you feel something, make you feel engaged. Philadelphia, I think, is just a perfect example of that, and a definitely deserving movie to be made after the gold. But that's about it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below, let me know your thoughts on Philadelphia, and stay tuned to next week where we're going to be doing another one of these videos, Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. So, until next time, stay tuned.